What's going on, everybody? Mark of Kardavox Academy here, and today I'm very excited. I was lucky enough to receive Shadow of Intent's new album, Imperium Delirium, early. Ben sent it to me, and I have been waiting to listen to it because I wanted to listen to it the first time through in an effort to really experience it with all of you. Right now, if you're new to the channel, my name is Mark. I am a vocal coach. I specialize in teaching people how to do crazy vocals safely and efficiently so they don't hurt themselves and they can follow their metal dreams. And I'm also a metal vocalist of about 16 years in a band called Kardavox on Metal Blade Records. And this is technically the second album review on the channel. The other vocal coach here at Kardavox Academy, her name is Verona, a vocal coach and singer of decades, did a reaction, like a sort of listen through reaction and analysis of Ghost's most recent album. And I've always wanted to get into reaction or album reviews. And I said, well, why not give it a try? So today, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be listening to the entire album, start to finish. Normally what I do is I pause the songs and I interject and I talk about vocal technique. But this time, every song is going to play entirely uninterrupted. And just like Verona did, after each song, I'll do a quick little 1 to 2 minute rehash of some of my thoughts. Also, I'm going to be doing something different. On this channel, I try my best to focus on technique and not interject too much of my opinion. Not this time. This time, I will be ranking how much I enjoy every song out of 10, taking that and getting an album score and basing it, you can see, on my not at all World of Warcraft-inspired rating. So a 1 to 2 out of 10 is boring, 3 to 4 is standard, 5 to 6 is interesting, 7 to 8 is mighty, 9 to 10 is mythic. So that's going to tell you how I feel about the album overall. I will be talking about it, in depth at the end. There will be at the very end of the video. In fact, if you just want to get to that, you don't want to see the live analysis, well, live. It's not really live, but you don't want to see the first time reaction analysis, you can skip to the times. You can use the timestamps in the description below or the pinned comment to skip right to it. So let's go ahead and check this out. I'm very excited. Shadow of Intent, I've reacted to a couple of the songs on the new album. I think Shadow of Intent has recently climbed the ladder into my favorite, if not one of my favorite metal bands. So I'm anticipating I'm going to enjoy it, but I'm going to be really forthcoming with my thoughts on it. So let's go ahead. Let's get started. Shadow of Intent, Imperium Delirium. At the time of this video, this album is brand new, hot off the presses. I'm very excited to hear what we have, what's coming. And let's start with track 1, Prepare to Die. Here we go. Okay, cool. So I put this video together last night. I took all the masters he sent and I linked them up and I put music videos in when there is a music video. So here are my first thoughts. Again, just some quick first impressions. First thing I'm noticing is I'm hearing a lot of, maybe not a lot, but I'm hearing some Cradle of Filth and some Dimmu Borgir influences here, which is very, very fascinating because oftentimes when deathcore or deathcore adjacent bands bring in black metal influence, I feel there, as someone who black metal is my favorite genre of metal. I feel it's a bit heavy-handed, but here I'm hearing it mostly in patterns. You know, obviously this is the first time I'm hearing it, but you know, Ben does a lot of these like very Danny Filth esque, like, you know, like very narrative, very staccato, interjected high vocals that sit over the instrumentation, and then we have those Dimmu moments where there's like this very big narration. You know, Shagrath, one thing he does a lot is he'll be like, you know, the key is in your hands, you know, and Ben's not using that Kargria throat singing technique, but he's doing this very deep, like, you know, narration. I'll be honest, I generally don't really love that, even though I'm a big Dimmu fan. When there's open narration, which is kind of hypocritical because my band Kardashev has a song with whole tracks that are just narration. Well, none of us are perfect. But it didn't take away from the song too much. I loved some of the slidey riffs. The song sounds very Shadow of Intent matured, right? And when I say matured, I don't mean to insinuate that they were immature, but every band, really good bands, grow with each album. And so for this opening track, Prepare to Die, unequivocally Shadow of Intent. However, not stuck to the past. I hear influences from, you know, Heretic Prevails, but I don't hear them trying to be that again. So I'm going to give this one a solid. There were some elements like the narrated section and some riffs I wish they would have held on to a little bit longer. So I'm going to give, but there were some moments that really got me. There were some really moments. So I'm going to give this one a solid 7. I'm going to give that song a solid 7. I tend to not really vibe with opening tracks anyway. Now this one, I reacted to this song and I'm just going to give you guys a heads up. This is my current favorite metal song of all metal songs. So let's have a good time. So, as you can guess, I love that song. I think that song is a metal compositional masterclass. First and foremost, I love how much Ben, I'm gonna be real. I've put at least 200 spins on that on Spotify. I'm very familiar with that song at this point. I love the depths and the heights that Ben pushed his voice, and not just tonally, but the way that he articulated it. One thing he is very smart about as a vocalist, and one thing I think he does, you know, I listen to all these metal vocalists, and I think a lot of them do things best. Like, for example, I recently did a Lorna Shore cover, and again, when I say best, it's really opinion based, but I think Will does a lot of great stuff sliding in and out of highs and lows. But when it comes to punctuating riffs and knowing how to interact with a vocal riff, in my opinion, nobody does it better than Ben currently. Ben listens to chugs, listens to the patterns, listens to the kicks, and knows exactly where to sit. Exactly where to sit. And it's just that whole song is so, every instrument is absolutely demanding your attention violently, but not interfering with each other. So that song has to have a 9. You would think I'd give it a 10, but I rarely there are very few songs that I would give a 10. In fact, I don't even know if I've ever given an album a score of mythic before. We'll see. I do have a handful of songs that I think are 10s, but it's really rare, because to be a 10, it has to be, again, in my opinion, like perfect. And the only part of that song that, again, is not my like favorite thing in the world is the, with or against, it matters not. But it's not bad. It sounds cool. It totally makes sense, right? It totally fits and it makes sense. And I try not to dock points too much when it's just my arbitrary feelings about it. Like, I have to take it into account, but I listen to it and I'm like, dang, not necessarily my thing, but really well done. So let's go ahead. Let's continue on. So that was Flying the Black Flag, which is, again, probably my favorite metal song currently. Now let's go to Infinity of Horrors. Here we go. Now, I'm pretty sure I reacted to that one, and that's a funny thing for me to say because it's like, Mark, wouldn't you remember it? No, I wouldn't, because as my wife can attest, I'm a very forgetful person, but I've heard it before 100%, and I have seen it before 100%. And, that song for me is, I love the vocal production on that song. There are moments where all of a sudden Ben's vocals will just boom, pan, just hard pan left and right, just making sections huge, and you hear the singing in the background. I think he told me it was his bandmates, but in the chorus, it's hard. They're a little far back. I kind of maybe would have preferred them a little bit more forward, but we have these but da 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 in the background, and it's such a cool texture. It's so awesome. And there's like this very strong like Demu moment in the middle, and I love that they are willing to explore a lot of these genres again without feeling like they're forcing them into place. I think that's one thing so far. I mean, we're only 3 songs into a 12-track album. This is going to be a long video. It's a risk. I'm running a risk because I don't know if people watch the whole thing, but I really think this is just something I really wanted to do, honestly, for my own enjoyment. But they don't feel like they're just smushing genres together for the sake of smushing genres together. Now, I will say I find the first bit of the song a bit hard to follow. I can't really exactly tell what's going on, and that's not always a bad thing, but I always ask myself when I'm listening to a piece of art or something that people have created, what can I perceive that this song is trying to do, and how well is it trying to do that thing? And I feel like the beginning of the song, I have a hard time being able to tell where we're going and what we're doing, but good golly, I think with the production and the like immense movement through like these different like just hints of genres, amazing. I love his composition outside of that, like like the movements from the lows to the highs are awesome, and that high that came in, I could smell that through the screen. That was stinky, that was dank, and I loved it. So even though I would say for me personally this song has a bit, not a rough start, just kind of a tough start to follow, I would still give it an 8 because I think it really, like, the part that I have a hard time telling what it's trying to do, it's like 10 seconds long, and then the rest of the song is phenomenal. So I think it's great. Let's listen to Mechanical Chaos. Here we go. Yeah, that's a 9. Come on. Come on. Like, okay. Like, here's something I'm really noticing about this album as I listen to it. And one thing I'm greatly appreciating is that here's the thing. I have obviously built a career. My entire life is plugged into metal music, metal vocals. Um, if I'm not teaching people how to do metal vocals, I'm making videos about metal vocals. If I'm not making videos about metal vocals, I am writing music for Kardashev where I do metal vocals, right? So like I am steeped in this stuff, and everything that you love has its weaknesses. And one of the weaknesses of, or I guess I should say hurdles of metal, specifically this really just thickly aggressive type of metal, is it's hard. You know what? I'm going to be honest. When I saw the 12 tracks, I was like, oh man, 12 of those? I was like, listen, I loved, before Ben sent me this album, I was Flying the Black Flag made me think like, okay, Shadow of Intent might be my favorite right now. But even so, I was like, that's like eating 4 pieces of cheesecake. Like, that's just too much. However, each one of these songs has seemed very intentionally focused on different aspects of what heavy music can do. We have had shredding. We have had, this song to me is all about patterns, all about rhythm, all about this like really like how much like somebody, they basically were like, yo, Shadow of Intent, what can you do with staccato? Just staccato as a concept. And they were like, oh yeah. And here we have this song. I love this song. Listen, I am never walking away from Kardashev. Kardashev will always be my deepest love. But I would love to be in a project that's this heavy. I would love to really let loose with all of my just stinkiness. And I would definitely take a lot of inspiration from what I'm hearing here, because like there are some things that I'm hearing here that for me would be very difficult to do. I would really have to because Kardashev, if you've heard Kardashev, we are far and away from this kind of metal. So I would really have to push myself. But I've been thinking about that a lot lately, you know, maybe because I used to be in 3 bands. Now I'm only in 1. And I'm kind of like, maybe it's time for band number 2. Maybe it's time for band number 2. We just release singles. We don't tour. We don't play live, but we release high quality, high caliber, really well done, highly aggressive music in like the deathcore, death metal, black metal sphere. Anyway, that song's a 9. And if anybody disagrees, well, you can. But really good. Really good. Let's keep going. Oh. All right, bonus points for the surprise ending. I love an ending that catches me off guard. One of my favorite endings to any metal song ever written is "It's Not Safe to Swim Today" by Veil of Maya. Doo-doo, song's done, right? So this song, Ben does a couple things that vocally that are very interesting. And I think one thing I'm really enjoying is how far his high vocals has come. Ben's been doing highs, for a long time. But, for much of his career, and reasonably so, Ben's lows were like the thing. But right now, not only is he hitting extremely good, and it's not just like, this isn't the album where his highs get super impressive. He's had really great highs for a while. But he's doing a lot of stuff with his highs that I find interesting. Like sometimes he'll be working with the same tone, basically, but he'll pierce it. Other times he'll let it sort of snarl out, right? So he's adding a lot of tone and color and texture. I will say that compositionally, this song didn't quite grip me as much. This song to me, as somebody who has written and composed with my band, not by myself, albums, you have to be very strategic about where you place your songs. And this song to me felt like the Palate Cleanser song. We're 5 tracks in, they just smacked our face to oblivion with Flying the Black Flag, Infinity of Horrors, and Mechanical Chaos. So you need something to kind of bring the listener down to earth. And so while I don't fault the choice, that's what this feels like to me. It's a great song in a great spot. But for me, I'm kind of like a glutton. And so I love a song with a 20-minute outro. And yes, I mean 20 minutes. So for me, again, on a personal level, I would have liked to keep up the energy of Mechanical Chaos. But at the same time, I understand and respect the decision. But I'm not letting that really cloud my view of the song too much. I would give that a solid 7. I think there was a lot to really enjoy. The guitar solo hit some really almost sorrowful melodies in there. So yeah, pretty good. I, on a personal level, wanted to keep up that I wanted them to keep punching my teeth in, but at the same time, again, you got to be strategic with how you place these albums. And we got 12 to get through. This is a chunky one. So, I might be 3 songs from now and be like, I'm thankful that they put a palate cleanser in there, right? So the Facets of Propaganda. Let's go. Ooh. again with the outro. Oh man, that song was awesome. I wish I almost want to listen. I'm not going to because the length of it. I almost want to listen to that song again. That song felt the most like Reclaimer, right? And if this is your first time hearing Shadow of Intent, Reclaimer is, from at least my neck of the woods, the album that really made people go, whoa, Shadow of Intent. Okay, there was the song, The Heretic Prevails. It's just like one of the most iconic breakdowns and vocal sections. Like Ben's vocal performance blew people away. And this has a lot of that feeling, but again, brought into the modern day. Like there were, again, I don't remember exactly how it went, but there are sections where it's like you get like pinch harmonics thrown in between chugs, and you don't hear that as much now. Like well, that's Lamb of God, but it's a similar writing technique, right? And you know, there are these really cool moments where they really create this amazing, and I'm not a music producer, so I don't exactly know how they did it, but they create these really cool staccato moments, and it dips into that almost metalcore. Like the beginning of the song almost feels like metalcore, but then we open up into these really almost like sorrowful chords, like these big, huge moments. That song, I think, has the most emotional depth, right? And so this is again, this album, each song so far is focusing on another aspect of what heavy music can do, and I really greatly respect it. It's making me think that maybe, depending on how the next couple songs go, I'm going to update my score for They Murdered Sleep, because I will say that it led into the Facets of Propaganda well. I don't think I don't know that I would have been as emotionally receptive to that tone change and those big open sorrowful chords had they not had a palate cleanser track, which again, I'm not saying that was their goal. It felt like a palate cleanser track to me. Which, by the way, to be clear, a palate cleanser track is not a track that does not have thought or a track that does not have intention. It's just that as a band, when you've written a bunch of tracks and your songs and they're all amazing and you're proud of them and you're deciding which order they go in, it's a track that leads from one section of the album to another nicely. That's all I'm saying. But I'm gonna give that one an 8. I hesitate because I feel like I'm giving out too many 8s and 9s, but I'm just going with my gut. I have reacted to Feeding the Meat Grinder, and it's awesome. Let's go ahead and listen to it. Great song. So I love to think that they partially named that track Meat Grinder because they have Corpse Grinder featuring. And I do have a couple qualms with that track. I love that track. That's a great. I think so far it's one of my favorites. I just wish we had a little bit more Corpse Grinder on it. Nothing against Ben. I think Ben's probably one of the best metal vocalists out there currently, but Corpse Grinder's features were so cool. They were so cool. And you know, it's extra fun. It's extra fun for me because I really missed the Cannibal Corpse boat. You know, when Cannibal Corpse, like, I think was like really like, I don't know the word, like when they were really like punctuating the scene. I was very much like a little church boy, and I knew about Cannibal Corpse, and I knew about their song that was called Hugged with a Knife, we'll say, or I Express Blood, we'll call it. And I was like, oh no, that's evil, you know what I mean? So by the time I warmed up to metal, I just had this preconceived notion that I didn't like death metal or death metal genre adjacent genres, and so I kind of skipped that whole thing entirely. But I think I love, as many of us do, I love Corpse Grinder's tone. Absolutely love it. And I think they plan the feature so well. There's a lot I could say about the song, but I do have a reaction for it. So if you want to hear me go into more detail, check it out on the channel. I've got a couple. I've also got interviews. I've had Ben on the channel twice to interview. So if you really like Shadow of Intent, or if you're really liking this album, dig into my videos. There are quite a few for you to enjoy. But yeah, I think it's like an incredibly, and there's like one spot that's like, it almost feels like two-step, but the snare doesn't fall on the right spot for it to be two-step. You know what I mean? So there's just a lot to chew on. I'm giving, I'm like another 8. I'm giving out too many high scores, but that's just what my heart tells me. That's what my heart tells me. And if I can't follow my heart, what am I doing? Now, I anticipate I'm going to like this next song solely on the title alone, because Vehement Draconian Vengeance sounds like I play a lot of JRPGs. I play a lot of Japanese role-playing games, and that sounds like somebody's ultimate ability. Like I can just see them like holding up a sword, and it's like, and they go, Vehement Draconian Vengeance. All right. And then, you know, like if you play JRPGs, you know what I mean. You know what I'm talking about. Like, tell me that's not an attack from the Tales series. Tell me that's not an attack from the Tales series. It is. It has to be. I mean, I don't think they actually named it after an attack from the Tales series, but it sounds like it would be like an ability I would use a lot. But anyways, let's keep going. Yeah. Yeah, so that was, there are a lot of really, it's crazy to me how this is something that's only not weird to say if you are a vocal coach or vocalist speaking about another vocal coach or vocalist. But here's your phrase of the video. Here's your takeaway. It's amazing to me how dexterous Ben's tongue is. You heard it here, folks. Keep it PG in the comments, or don't. I don't care. But he will, when he's doing his lows, he will move from these different articulatory spaces that just blow my mind. He'll be doing, and I hear like a lot of like Travis Ryan influence, Cattle Decapitation, which anybody who knows this channel knows that Travis Ryan is one of my favorite top tier metal vocalists, right? But he'll have a lot of these Travis Ryan-y, like, he'll do a lot of that stuff, and then all of a sudden his tongue will just like, and he's doing a lot of, and it's it's not just that he's able to do those separate tones, it's the fact that he's able to link those tones together and smoothly. That's nuts. Like, even if you don't like this band, you gotta respect that, right? And all of a sudden they have this break, and I hear, "Dan," and listen, I don't remember the chord progression, so I'm just gonna create something in my mind that's similar. But all of a sudden I hear this like guitar kind of in the background, and I'm like, that sounds like black metal. And then boom, we have something that sounds like it could be inspired by one of my favorite black metal albums, Gorgoroth, Ad Majorum Satanas Gloriam. Amazing album. Amazing. I got 3 of my favorite black metal albums right here. Helig Usfart by Horde, right? Chronic Illness Wish, whoop, by Genital Shame, who actually did a vocal spot for us on our most recent album, and whoop, Solus by Lengsel. Amazing. In addition to that, Ad Majorum Satanas Gloriam, it sounded like it would fit right in. Like, it's not quite Sign of an Open Eye, but it has that smell, that flavor, that aura. Sign of an Open Eye-ish. You know what I'm saying? But again, not trying to be like, hey guys, here's the black metal part, but at the same time being like, hey guys, here's the black metal part. Really good. And I don't think that's easy to do. So I'm taking my question marks away. That song gets a 9. That song, it may not for me have the repeatability that Flying the Black Flag does, but there is so much impressive stuff going on in that song, compositionally and artistically. I can't bring myself to give it anything less than a 9, right? And I want to be clear, this is my first album. There are a lot of albums I don't like. I'm actually kind of a hard sell with music, so I hope this doesn't set a precedent that like Mark just loves everything. Trust me, no. Let's go ahead. Let's get into Beholding the Sickness of Civilization. Great title. Mm. Mm. That outro was my favorite part of the song. Wow. Like, I haven't really commented on the drums very much, and part of the reason for that is I really don't know a lot about drums, but I listen to them a lot, and I love drums, and I love the cymbal play that we've heard in the album so far, in like the panning drums and things. But that outro, ooh, demanded my attention. The way the drummer, and again, I'm speaking very much outside of my expertise right now. When I'm speaking about vocals, I'm in my expertise. When I'm speaking about drums, I'm about as far out of the farthest out of my expertise is production, mixing, mastering, that sort of thing. Drums is pretty close, right? Because my relationship with drums is I watch amazing drummers and I'm like, dang, you hit those good. And that's all I know, right? But the way that the drummer sort of throttled down the song and changed the texture of it without being intrusive, I found very impressive. That was really cool. He could have done that for 5 minutes and I would have been cool with it. But again, I love a long outro. Yeah, really cool. I wish I knew more about drumming so I could really give you some meaningful thoughts about that. I think overall this song again for me felt like a track that is going to do a good job leading into the other tracks. Now, that is not to say that standalone it's not strong. This is a very strong track. I don't know if it's going to stand out to me super intensely. Again, the narrative opening is really cool and really well done. Just not super my thing. The only band that's ever like really deeply sold me with like narration in their music is Carrick Angren, and it's only, I can't even remember the name of the album, but it's the one that's like sort of the retelling of Hansel and Gretel. And you know, he does that. His face seems friendly, but also kind of sick. And ta-da! That's the only one that really ever like I was like, whoa. But again, I want to reiterate, like, I don't think it sounds bad or it's damaging to the song or that it's any mistake. It's just one of those things where it's not really my jam. So it kind of started off and I was like, hey, this is cool. Not super my deal. But I will say the way that they led the narration into the meat of the song was pretty well done. It didn't feel smashed together. So I'm going to give, again, this is just my personal enjoyment. I'm going to give that one a solid 7. I would absolutely listen to it again, but I don't think it's going to be like a super standout one for me. Let's keep going. Nice. Oh. Only qualm is that it could have been longer. That dum 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 dum. Oh, give me 5 minutes of that. But I'm not going to knock the song for that, because I know that that is kind of a weird thing. That's a Mark thing. Like, most people probably wouldn't want 5 minutes of just tuk 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 tuk, and I respect it. That's a 9. Let me tell you something. A good vocalist, something I take to heart, a good vocalist knows when to shut up. And mad respect to Ben for staying off that song. Because listen, had he put his vocals on that song, it would have been amazing. It probably still would have been a 9. But oh my God, what an instrumental. The first time I ever heard an instrumental on an album that really blew my mind, I think was Within the Ruins, and I think it was Ataxia. I remember being like, where's the vocalist? And at the end of it being like, I don't know, but that was sick. And what a great spot for that instrumental to be. I feel like a lot of bands would have put that in the middle. I might have had that inclination as well. But putting that so close to the end of the album, smart move. What a celebration of color and texture. What a fascinating. Yet again, this album is exploring all the things that heavy music can do. And heavy music can do groovy instrumentals very well. So yeah, impressive. Wow. We had so much interesting panning and phasing and like pinch harmonics again pushed. That's an interesting trait of this album. Not always. Like, this one is the first one that had those pinch harmonics like really far forward, and they were panned entirely into my right ear. Like, entirely into my right ear. Fascinating choice, but a cool choice. But then throughout the album, there have been what sound to me anyways, I could be wrong, what sound to me like pinch harmonics pushed very, very far back. Interesting that they're far back through the whole album, and then in the instrumental is when they make the pinch harmonics more dominant. And to me, that feels like the band thinking about the album as a whole work versus a collection of singles they wrote and smushed together. And that's very cool. No matter the cost. Here it comes, y'all. Here it comes. Something. Whoa. Okay. Dang. Really interesting closing of the scream. He had like this, and again, I'm hearing it for the first time. I'm not in the studio with the guy, but it sounded like this tunnely, like, you know, that he then closes down and almost blows out of his lips, right? Could be wrong, but like this. Really neat transition. I really like that they brought some of the groove back so that it feels like this song really feels like, no matter the cost, makes sense coming from Apocalypse Canvas. It makes sense coming from Apocalypse Canvas. And also, you know, this is an instance of where I think the narration kind of worked for me because it sounds like it's over like a speaker, like it sounds like it's like it like in some sort of military base or camp or something. And so I think thematically it really works with the album. That being said, this one's probably going to be a 7 for me as well. There were like that ending was awesome, and I loved how abrupt it was. But there was nothing wrong about it, but at the same time, like I feel like it made sense coming from Apocalypse Canvas, but I also feel like Apocalypse Canvas was so good. Any song coming after it was gonna be a tough to follow. Now listen, if I was in the car with somebody and they were like, let's put on No Matter the Cost, I'd be like, absolutely, that song is fire. But in the context of the whole album, I definitely think I'm gonna give this one a 7. Which, by the way, 7 would put this album in solidly in the mighty category. So here we go. Imperium Delirium, the title track, and also dang, a long song. We're at 47:11 and we got to get to 54:49. So it's a bit beefy, right? I'm going to reserve my thoughts. I think what I'm trying not to do is I'm trying not to overhype the last song in my head because, again, it's the title track. And so that does put some expectations in my head, but I want to be fair. Right? But so far, so good. Let's keep going. I'm a little nervous. I don't know why. I'm a little like, here we go. Yes. Thank best choice. Best choice. It sounded like they were leading up into another big moment, but they let the album fade away. Beautiful choice. Love that. Excellent work. Excellent work. That song, you know, obviously they're going to tour this album. Right. Well, their recent, you know, they were on tour just recently, so they were probably playing a lot of these songs. But Imperium Delirium, I didn't catch any of their shows. Imperium Delirium would be a great song to end a set with. There are the chanty moments. There are the nasty breakdown moments. There's the very iconic Shadow of Intent riffage. I'm gonna give that song a solid 8. I'm gonna give that song an 8. I think that was a very strong outro to the album. You know, ending an album is a hard thing to do, especially when like you have so many like nines sprinkled throughout the album. However, I love that that album did that final song did things that the rest of the album wanted me to do. That's very interesting. You know, I said, "Oh, I wish the clean, gritty like singing chorus was more forward." We got it in the last part. I said, "I wish we had, you know, a longer, more like, you know, I guess atmospheric outro." We got it, right? So ultimately, and this is something that's very hard for albums to do, it paid off. And that to me is the deciding factor as to whether or not 12 tracks makes sense. 12 tracks is a lot of tracks for an album that is going to have or is going to have to work with a very similar vibe all the way through, which is high power, high energy, high octane aggression. Right? So Imperium Delirium, yeah, great exit to the album. So let's go ahead and let's do like an overall final thoughts and review. I think that this is unequivocally a Shadow of Intent album. Right now, that's obvious, but if you love Shadow of Intent, if you like Shadow of Intent, you know what I mean. This album has iconic sounds that only Shadow of Intent really achieves in the way that they do. The combination of you know, sort of hop skipping riffs with the choruses, with the VSTs, with the you know, the virtual instruments and everything in the background. They put these things together in a way that is so iconic. If you took Ben out of the equation, you would still know it's Shadow of Intent. And I think that's really good because a lot of times in the deathcore world, it feels like the bands are riding on their vocalists. And if you've heard a deathcore band where you basically push play and you wait for the big slow breakdown, for the vocalist to do its thing or their thing, you know what I'm talking about. And I never had one spot. I never found any song to be like boring where I was like, okay, let's just get to the breakdown so I can hear the animal noises and move on. Right. So I think this album is really good. It's amazing to me how they can take riffs, how they can take sections, and they can, it's hard to explain, but it's like these songs are aggressive internally. Like the riff that comes next drags the song that the part that came before it aggressively, like we are going this way, this song is going in this direction. And it's not to say drags is like, oh, this song drags on. Not at all. It's like the song is aggressively changing pace and forcing you to come with, but in a way that is cohesive and not intrusive at any point. And I think that this is a masterful combination of the drummer's ability to control the direction of the song, which makes sense for a drummer to be able to do, but particularly with his cymbal play and with the production on the drums, the very strategic use of panning, the very strategic use of leveling the drums so they're sitting nicely in the mix, and also his ability to not just blast through the whole thing, his ability to play around. Which leads me to the guitars, incredibly playful. Even when Shadow of Intent is at its most aggressive, there is fun in the music, right? And then you take all of these things. We even had moments where the bass was shining through, where the bass was doing these groovy moments or these clacky, aggressive moments. And then finally, you top all that off with maybe Ben's most dynamic album so far. Hard to say, but he was hitting a lot of dynamic movement that I feel like across the whole album this is the most he's ever done. And artfully so. Like, I never, like I said, with Apocalypse Canvas, I respect his choice to shut up, but I never wanted him to. There are times, and you will all know what I mean, when you listen to an album, especially in the deathcore world or deathcore adjacent genres, where, like, yes, it's a very vocally driven genre, but you're just like, bro, we get it. You can pig squeal, you can tunnel. Good God, shut up. Right? I feel that a lot. And I didn't feel at any point that Ben was overstaying his welcome. While I do think the album paid off with its 12 tracks, I will say that I think it's a lot. It's a lot. And I did find myself at times, thinking to myself, I would have been okay with 10. I'm not upset with 12. I'm not mad with 12 tracks. I think all these 12 tracks are worth it. But, had they before releasing said, like, hey, we're going to cut some of these songs and save them as singles for later, I would have been like, I respect that choice. But again, I don't think that 12 necessarily got in the album's way. Really, there's not a whole lot here that I think was done poorly. I think for me, the elements of the album where, I might have given a song a lower score is purely on, on personal preference. It's not like there was a snare that was like so far forward it was dominating the song, or that it's not like the vocals were so severely off time that the vocals weren't off time anytime that I caught, but there was no moment where I felt like I was listening to bad musicianship or bad writing. And that's no surprise, because Shadow of Intent has been playing this game for a very long time. The only times when I kind of felt myself backing away was just when they were doing things that weren't to my preference, and that I completely understand. I listened to a lot, like, remember earlier in the video when I said I'm primarily a black metal guy? I have a lot of bands that a lot of people absolutely despise. I listen to a lot of songs that sound like they were recorded through tinfoil in the woods of Norway in 1992. So when somebody doesn't like something because it's not to their taste, I get it, because I live very much on the extreme side of things with that. But I will say that I think this is a really strong move for Shadow of Intent, and I really hope that they come through Arizona, because I would love to catch this live. The last thing I'll say is, one of my measures for a really good album is if it inspires me and pushes me to want to do something creative, right? If an album can get my fat ass off the couch, so to speak, I think that that's pretty impressive. And, like I said, I've been thinking lately, like, maybe it's time to have band number 2. Again, it would have to be just singles, no touring, no big expensive albums, just releasing singles that are high quality, high caliber, for the sake of releasing great music. After this album, I'm like, yeah, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to put some feelers out there and see what I can find. But in any case, I would absolutely recommend this album. I would recommend this album to anybody who is into any type of metal, because I think that there's a lot to love here. If somebody's not into the super heavy side, well, there's plenty of melody. There's plenty of, this is going to sound silly, but there's plenty of restraint across this album, especially in Apocalypse Canvas. And I think that Apocalypse Canvas, Flying the Black Flag, I think those two might be my favorites. Although, of course, you saw how I responded to Vehement. I don't know how to say it. Draconian Vengeance. Anyway, this video is almost 2 hours long, but I love it, and I had a great time. If you want to see more of these full reaction album reviews, please let me know in the comments below. I would be happy to do more of them, because I really enjoyed this. If you're interested in learning about metal vocals, check out some of my other videos. Check out KardaVoxAcademy.com. Again, I teach people how to do all sorts of, like, so they can make the metal music that they've always wanted to make and perform the metal music that they've always wanted to perform. But beyond that, again, thanks to Ben for the opportunity to catch this album a little bit early and get this review done. Many thanks. Much love. I'm out.